Okay, good afternoon, everyone. This is Daniel Schlegel, Director of Implementations at Axiom Human Resource Solutions, and today we're going to do a deep dive look into timekeeping reports. I had a previous training session that was based around timekeeping itself, and I did point out a few reports during that training session that I thought were useful. There may be a little bit of overlap between that training session and this one, so I just kind of wanted to mention that up front. But you know, this kind of stuff is never a bad thing to hear more than once. So with that, we're going to get started. I'm currently logged into our demo company here. And as you can see, we have everything available to us. We're actually going to start not under my reports, but under managed time, because I think that here under managed time and managed timesheets, we can actually find a couple of good resources that aren't, you know, you might not typically think of as reports, but they're actually screens that you can use as reports. So we're going to start with either by pay period or current. Both can really be used in the same way. It just depends on what you want to look at, because if you want to use, you know, by pay period, that one you can set, you know, to either, you know, usually the previous pay period might be kind of helpful there. So we can actually take a look here and see that on our previous pay period, you know, that by default, this screen shows us you know, the number of raw hours that the employees have on their timesheet, right? Well, this isn't the only thing that this screen can show. So if we actually go over here to select columns, you can see that there are, you know, just like many other screens in the system, a ton of columns that can be added into this page. A lot of employee information, employee dates, cost center information, and the like. So what I really like to recommend that people use this screen for, and also the, you know, the current timesheets one that I mentioned as well, would be for, you know, it's great for using for incomplete punches. So, you know, missing punches, you can actually, well, on this screen, they're called incomplete records. So we can actually bring in this column. We'll get rid of some of these. We don't need this one. We don't need this one. Let's bring it up here. Get rid of that. So now you can see, you know, we can bring in, I don't think we're going to have any. Actually, you know what? Let's just go ahead. We'll make one for George here. We'll say on Monday he clocked in at 8, but forgot to clock out. Okay? So now we can see that we have an incomplete record because he's missing his out punch for that day. Well, if you want, we can filter this column here and say, you know, incomplete records greater than 0, and it's going to show us the employees who are missing a punch in this pay period. So that's a really easy, you know, if you go up to our settings and we say save settings, we can save this view as, you know, missing punches previous pay period, right? So that's a really easy way to go up and to go ahead and set up a report that will show you, you know, after a pay period ends, you can come in here, you can take a look and see, well, we still have these punches that are missing for the pay period that just ended. Now, like I said, you can also set up something very similar in current timesheets as well, where you can, you know, if you like to check timesheets as you go along and make sure that you don't have any missing punches for the current timesheets, you can do that too. Now, I will warn, if you're doing that on the current timesheets, if people have clocked in for the day and haven't clocked out yet, it will show as an incomplete time entry or an incomplete record because they have an in, but they don't have an out yet. So that's something to keep in mind if you're looking at current timesheets. But this is super useful for previous pay periods. Something else that you can bring in here that I like to use these reports for as well would be, you know, you can bring in calculated hours, either totals. So, you know, like I said, by default, it shows raw hours. Well, if you have, you know, if you have the system taking out lunches for people, if you have the system rounding people's punches so that you have actual calculated hours instead of raw hours, you can bring in the total raw hours instead of calculated hours to see those. And then you can also bring in columns for all of your various pay categories. So your regular, your overtime. If you're tracking reimbursements in the timesheets, you can bring that in. If you're tracking pieces, you can bring those in. So this could also be used, to also create a pretty handy overtime report so that you could say, previous pay period, how much overtime did I have? Current pay period, how much overtime are we looking at, right? Or if you wanted to, maybe if you have a weekly pay period, you want to say, how close are people getting to overtime? You can bring in the regular, your regular hours column, and then look to see, maybe who's over 35 hours for the week or something along those lines, something like approaching overtime, right? So again, these screens people typically don't think of as, being used for reports, but they can actually be made into some pretty useful reports. Another thing that kind of goes along that line under managed time again would be managed time off or time off requests, and then this all screen. So what this all screen does, I'm going to change this to this year so we have more to look at here. Basically what you're looking at here is all of the time off requests made in a period of time, right? And then what their request date is. So we have some rejected, we have some approved, and we have some new ones down here as well that haven't been decisioned yet. Now, something else that's pretty nice about this screen that you can do is we can actually bring in a button that will allow you to view the workflow of that time off request. So one report that I kind of like to, create using this screen, you could see you can either do request state new, or you can do workflow status created, so that you're only seeing the time off requests that haven't been approved or rejected yet, okay? And then if you're curious as to where they sit in the workflow, you can click on this button. It's the, the two intertwining arrows here to actually view the workflow to see who we're waiting on. So in this case, this time off request, which one I click on, I don't remember. It was made, this one was made by Amber. So Amber made it for herself, and we're currently waiting on Kathy to either approve or reject that request. So if you have some time off requests that are hanging out there, you're getting to the end of the pay period, you need to have them, approved or rejected before time is processed, you can come here, you could create this report, save it as one of your reports, and then always use this view workflow button to find out who you're waiting on to approve or reject these requests. Okay, so that is what I'm going to point out under managed time. And now we're going to jump into my reports, where, we're just basically going to do a brief overview of everything that's kind of, well, not everything, but what I find to be the most useful reports under time and labor. And then we'll also take a look at a few under system as well, because there are some that I think are really, really useful under system that maybe you're not aware of. So first, let's take a look here under time allocation, and we're going to look at the time summary by week. So the nice thing about time summary by week is that it will show the number of hours that an employee works in a day, or it will show if they missed a scheduled shift. So we can see here that for Casey actually does have scheduled shifts. And we can see that she's been absent a whole bunch. However, on Monday, the 17th, she did work 7.5 hours. So we can see the number of hours worked, or we can see, that she was absent for a scheduled shift. let's see, we have some, so we also have Andrew here who took time off for this entire week. So we can see, you know, again, the T for Andrea means that she had time off. And then, let's see, what did we have here? Oh, for Amber, we had a punch on one day, but we don't have a punch out. So we can actually see that that is a missing punch. So our M there would be standing for missing punch. So this is kind of a nice, kind of clean, kind of, you know, just really easy way to see what's kind of going on for people. Our next report is our detailed hours report. This just kind of shows, we'll change the calendar range to this month again, so we get some information here. So this shows a breakdown of, you know, everyone's punches, everyone's hours, the cost centers, if you're keeping track of that, that'd be over here, and time off as well. So it breaks that down. Actually, yeah, we'd be looking at that by day. And the nice thing about this report is that you can actually, again, come to select columns. We have a whole bunch again that we can add in. So our separate pay categories. You can add in notes if you're keeping track of timesheet notes. You can bring those in. You can bring schedules in if you're using those. And finally, another really nice thing about this one is that we can also bring in a missed punch column. So this would be another report that could be used and built out as a missing punches report. Because again, you know, so by default, you know, this one is calendar range today. Well, of course, you can change that to pay period and do, you know, previous pay period and make this your missing punch report as well. Our next report is going to be our detailed hours overview. And this one is just kind of a calendar view for an entire pay period. So as you can see right now, we have a semi-monthly pay period selected. And then it shows your punches, it shows your calculated total time, your raw total time, and time, you know, and time off if time off is being taken. So we can see that Andrea here was taking time off. We scroll down here a little bit, we can see that Casey has actual punches and actual time. And then down below the actual pay period itself, you'll see totals for each time type and then overall totals as well. So the nice thing about this report, this is one that can actually be, and I'm sure you probably saw before I chose it, there's also detailed hours overview PDF. So this is one that's really it can be easily exported and printed out if you have, you know, if you want to keep hard copies of what people worked in kind of a calendar view. Our next one is summary hours. So this is actually going to summarize our hours by day. So we're not going to see punches. You know, we're not going to see anything like that. We're just going to see the total number of hours per day. Again, you can bring in all the various pay categories, lots of time entry information there. And the nice thing about this report is it comes in a few different flavors. So this is just the basic summary hours, but there are also options available for by employee, if you want to look at one employee over a specific amount of time, by cost center, if you're concerned with, you know, one specific cost center or just a couple specific cost centers, and you're not really concerned about employees specifically. You can also do by day if you're really more concerned with one specific day, or by week. I think we all know about the time off calendar, so I'm going to go ahead and skip over those. And next, I'm going to look at this time off roster, which is actually just kind of a quick view. I'll choose this month because I'm pretty sure we have some people on here. A quick view of who has time off. So if there's nothing in the box, then they're not taking any time off. However, we can see here, I believe that was Andrea again. Yeah, who had, you know, her 5 days of vacation. So that's showing up in this view. This is another one, you know, depending on how many employees you have, you could export it as a PDF and actually kind of post, you know, if you wanted to post it somewhere, that'd be a good one, that telling people, you know, hey, here's who has time off coming up. I know that a lot of you are probably familiar with the attendance board, but I will go ahead and comment on that. So the attendance board is really cool because it will actually show you a lot of information, including who is currently clocked in, who is currently clocked out, if someone is taking time off. And then, so some of you might have that on your dashboard when you first log into the system. This version actually has more information, including when they last started, when they last ended, the date of that last end, and the amount of time since their last in and their last out. So if we actually, you know, update Andrea's timesheet here and we say that she clocked in at 9 a.m., well, we'll now see that she is clocked in. Her last start was 9 a.m. today. It's been 4.29 hours since that clock in. Final one I'm going to look at here, I think I've already mentioned this one before, but I just want to recap it because this is a really good report. This is our late, early, absent report. This one will show you, you know, an employee's scheduled time for whatever date range you're looking at. So in this case, we're looking at today specifically. And if they have a schedule, so the schedule is really, you know, paramount to this report, because if they don't have a schedule, it's not really going to tell you anything. Well, let's say in this case, so Casey does have a schedule. So we'll clock Casey in at 7:30. We'll clock her out at 6 p.m. So we have some data to look at here. So in this case, we can see that Casey's actual scheduled time in was 8 a.m. Her scheduled time out was 5 p.m. Her scheduled total was 9 hours. So we can see now that because she actually clocked in at 7:30 and clocked out at 6 p.m. She was in early by half an hour, and she was out late by an entire hour. So this is just a really nice way to see who may have been, you know, late in. So in this case, she wasn't late in, she was early in. You can see who may have been late. You can see who may have been early out. You can see who may have been scheduled but absent, right, if they didn't have anything. So in this case, let's take a look at yesterday. So in this case, yesterday, Casey was scheduled again, 8 to 5. We don't have any punches for her. So it says now that she was scheduled, but she was absent. Or if they weren't scheduled, but they did work, that shows up here too. So this one report can be used for a bevy of different things. I mean, you can look at, you know, people who were scheduled but didn't actually come in. You can look at those random people that for whatever reason weren't scheduled but decided to come in and work anyway. You can check out who was late coming in. You can check out who was early going out. You can make so many different reports from this one single report. But again, in order to do so, you do need those schedules set up. All right, so now we're going to come down to the second option of reports here, the second group, calculated time, and we're going to take a look at some of these. So the first one here, average weekly hours by pay period, easily shows the average hours worked per week over a period of time. So if we, let's see here. Okay, so if we make, now we don't have much data to go on our demo company here, so this is going to look really funky. But if we look at January through the end of August, we can see here that Leah Ashfield works an average of 17.7 hours per week. That's her raw, and then her calculated would actually be 16.79. So this can actually help you see over, as you can see here, a period of time, what just the average number of hours that your employees are working. Next, we have our calculated time summary, which shows the total number of hours worked or taken off over a period of time. So in this case, we can see with Casey, we have 17.5 total hours worked. Those are all regular hours. None of it was overtime. None of it was time off. Now, I will point out here, and this, it's really handy here that Andrea actually has some time off. So we can see that she had 40 hours of time off. And if you'll remember, those were actually vacation hours. Now, the one thing that kind of drives me crazy about this report is by default, for whatever reason, and we'll look at select columns here to actually, so I can actually explain this. For whatever reason, the time off, so we have our vacation, we have our personal, we have our sick leave, it's shown as calculated work hours. Well, time off isn't a work hour, it's a time off, right? So in order to actually break out what these time off hours are, we would need to look up, so here's vacation. So we want calculated time off hours by vacation. So we can bring that one up, we can replace that one. And now when we select our columns, we'll see that this matches. So here we have our total time off hours, here we have our 40 vacation hours. So at any point, if you're trying to use, this is another great report that I actually frequently recommend to people just to show, your total hours, whether it's for a pay period, whether it's for a week, whether it's over a really long period of time, that, you're trying to fill out some sort of random report that you get either from, maybe 401k providers or from the government or something along those lines. This is a great report to use. However, if you're looking at time off information, you have to remember that by default, it's going to have these silly work, work hours columns for time off when that's not what they are. They're not work hours, they're time off hours. So you'll have to bring in the time off hours by column for any time off that you're looking at. We'll also take a look at the calculated time summary by week. So this is a very similar report, except that it will break if you have, a pay period that's multiple weeks, whether that's, bi-weekly, semi-monthly, or monthly, it will actually break down the timesheets into per week information on this report, whereas the other report was just all totals for whatever time period you're looking at. So as we can see here, for this pay period, it's semi-monthly, we have 9/16 to 9/22, and then 9/23 to 9/29. Again, with this one, by default, the time offs are going to be work hours instead of time off hours. So again, you would need to bring in the time off hours column. All right, next up is our calculated time by workday. So again, we're just getting more specific here, rather than showing, our totals over the entire time period or over the weeks. This is going to break it down even further and show you per day. So really, these reports are just kind of depending on how specific you want your information. Now, I will point out, as you can see here, we do have punch information for these, or for this report. By default, it shows the raw data. If you actually are more concerned with the calculated punches, you can find those in select columns. So here's our in date and time and our out date and time calculated. Now, getting even more specific than that is going to be our calculated time by entry. So once again, just going even more and more minute. So in this case, you know, we can see here that Casey had 2 different punches on 9/17. So we have her clocking in for the morning, clocking out for lunch 12:30, and then leaving at 5. So once again, just getting super in depth with this report. So as you can see, you know, you can start with the calculated time summary, and which you can look at totals for an entire year, and we can come all the way down into looking at specific time entries on a specific day. Finally, I did want to point out our calculated hours by calendar day here, because this one can be used. This one is very similar to the workday one we looked at previously, which will show you totals for you know, an individual day. But the thing about this one is it's actually calendar day. So if you have employees who work shifts that cross midnight, this will actually break those shifts up, and you would see how many hours they worked on an actual, you know, calendar day, starting at 12:01 that morning and going to 12 midnight that evening. So a little bit different, but that option is available as well. All right, so now we're going to jump into system reports, and there are a few in here that are you know, related to timekeeping that I happen to use quite frequently. The first is going to be all punches. There are some of you that I've probably told about this report before. This is a really great report where you can actually see, and we may not, let's see if we actually have any. I don't know if anyone's actually punched in and out in our demo company here. We'll let the circle spin for a little while. Oh, okay, we did. Cool. So as you can see, this is really great because it will show you the day and the time that the punch was made, whether the punch was accepted, right? And then the source type. So if you have employees using the app, it'll show you, you know, it was made in the app. Session means that they actually logged into the website and, you know, went to their timesheet and did punch in, punch out on the timesheet. If you see web clock, that means that you have the web clock turned on and they use the web clock homepage instead of the regular homepage to punch in and out. Now, if they did use the mobile app and you have, you know, location services turned on for that, you can actually pull up a map and see where that punch was made. In this case, this punch was made right here at Axiom. I can tell that just by looking at the map. We also see here that at one point Casey was terminated and she was making punches after her last day, so we'll see that listed too. And then another cool thing is that if you have time clocks and the employee punched in or out from a time clock, you can actually go to select columns here, and at the very bottom are some options for hardware terminal name and hardware device ID. So if you have specific names for your time clocks, you can bring that in. You can see the name of the time clock, or if it's just the device ID, you can bring that in and see either of those. Now, we don't have any time clocks here, you know, hooked up to our demo company, so we can't see anything there, but that's what it would actually show. You can actually see the name of the terminal or the ID, the corresponding ID of the terminal, so you could actually tell which time clock was used by the employee. So again, this is a really great report. I use this one all the time. Another one that you might look at would be unprocessed punches. This one, I don't think we're going to have anything on the, oh, we do have a few. Oh, okay. So here, again, are unprocessed punches for Casey because she tried to make punches after she was terminated in the system. So these were punches that actually, the system accepted the punches but didn't actually put them on her timesheet because she was terminated in the system. For our California clients, you might see some of these if you have rules set up where your employees clock out for lunch and can't clock in before that half an hour is over. If they try to punch in before that half an hour is over, the system will reject their punch because it hasn't been half an hour yet, and it'll show up here as an unprocessed punch, and it'll say something along the lines of, the employee was trying to punch in when they weren't allowed. I can't remember off the top of my head what it says exactly, but it's something that alludes to that fact. If you do want that, that punch to be processed, there is a reassign button here that will allow you to go ahead and populate this punch to their timesheet if you do want to do that. All right, finally, we also have 2 audit trail reports under system, so system audit trail, and under TA for time and attendance. So we can look at timesheets, which this will show you who made edits to employee timesheets. So we can see that today I've made 2 edits. So, system administrator, that's me. I made a change to Andrea's timesheet. I've made a change to Casey's timesheet. So if you're looking to just see, who logged in and who made a change to an employee's timesheet, you can see that here. Not very detailed. If you want really detailed information, then we can go back to our system, our audit trail, time and attendance, and we can look at time entries. And I know I've told a number of people about the audit on an individual employee's timesheet. Well, this is the audit for everybody's timesheets. You can come here and we can see that exact same audit information just for everybody. So in this case, we can see, both Casey and Andrea again. Here's where I entered the 9 a.m. for Andrea. Here's where I entered that entire time entry for Casey. We can see, it was created, the times that it was created, and by whom. Also, of course, IP address is logged in case you need to use that to track people down. So again, really, really useful if you're looking at a number of different, if you're looking into the records of a number of different employees instead of just one, you can come here and look at a number of different employees all at the same time. Okay, well, that is what I had scheduled to show today. We're just a little bit past our half-hour time. I don't see that any questions have been asked. So I will, as normal, remind you that if there is a report that you're looking to make, some information that you want to show up somewhere and you can't just figure out how to do it, you're always more than welcome to contact us here at Axiom, and we will help you do so. We have years and years of experience doing this stuff, so if it can be done, we will help you do that. But I'm kind of hoping that, seeing these different reports and talking about what they can do for you will kind of give you some ideas of what you can, what you can do in the system. But we're always here to help as well. So if no one has any questions, then I will thank you all for joining me today. As always, a recording of this training session will be uploaded to our YouTube channel by the end of the week, in case you want to go back and watch again, just kind of get a refresher of anything that we went over. So I hope you all have a good rest of your afternoon. Thank you very much.